I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Those up the I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Those up the head. Intercepted. That's 40. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25, 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And there the cannons go. Fire them. I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Those up the head. Intercepted. That's 40. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25, 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, Bucs fans, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Now that my Spectrum internet has ruined everybody's Sunday morning, we can start the show. Welcome back. I'm your host, as always, Rhett Matthew. Joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish. We have had ourselves one hell of a last 45 minutes, but we are on the air. And Evan, today we are going to be breaking down and grading every single pick the Buccaneers made in the 2025 NFL Draft. We have got a loaded show, lots to talk about, and I'm very excited because this was a productive draft. And in a lot of ways, people can say whatever they want, but it was a surprising draft as well, and those are always fun to break down.
For sure. We're going to break down the big surprise, right? This is the first time we talked to you guys since, the draft began. So a lot to break down. There was some surprise. There was a lot of things that made sense, right? I think, after the first round, when you say like there wasn't many like surprises, right? After the first round, just a couple of things, that made sense. And, surprises can be bad. Surprises can be good though. And, we're going to break it all down here. So I think they got some pretty good value on day 3 in particular. But yeah, and they took a chance on some guys that I think with upside, guys that I think have high ceilings if everything goes right now. I mean, it's up to them, to develop those guys and put them in roles where they can succeed. But I do think the Bucs did a good job of identifying talent, identifying a potential role for that talent, and then, drafting them.
No, I agree. I think overall, headed into this draft, everybody was talking about the defensive side of the ball. And when you look at this class as a whole, the Buccaneers did what a lot of people expected them to do outside of the first round. So let's just go ahead and get into the first round. All of the pomp and circumstance of the NFL draft, night number 1 in Green Bay, it looked like a lot of fun. Huge crowd out there, a lot of active participants. And the Buccaneers stayed put with pick number 19. They take a wide receiver from Ohio State, the all-time leader in receptions for The Ohio State University. That is wide receiver Emeka Egbuka. At the time, he was your newest Tampa Bay Buccaneer. But again, a move that I think a lot of people didn't rule out entirely, because again, we talked about it on the show. We talked about it on the offensive prospect show with Mr. Bucs Nation.
The offensive prospect show was basically a wide receiver show. That's what we were talking about pretty much.
Yeah, so we had covered a lot of those guys. And when we talk about the wide receiver position, there were a couple of players left on the board. Wanted to get your thoughts there. But the Buccaneers make Egbuka their guy. Very talented player, very talented wide receiver, but most people thought they were going to go with a defensive player there. The talent of Egbuka, I think, is going to outweigh whatever the team needed at that moment. I think that is probably the gut check reaction and reasoning from that front office. But what are your thoughts on the Buccaneers taking a wide receiver here at 19?
Obviously not something, we talked about the possibility, right? But I think even in that show, which I don't know exact the wording, but I'm just assuming, we probably said probably not, right? At 19. It wouldn't have shocked me if the Buccaneers, drafted somebody, drafted somebody like at that offensive position, right? Tight end, receiver, in day 2, day 3, something like that. Uh, pick 19. While we talked about the possibility, it wasn't a 0% chance, right? The percentage wasn't zero, but it was pretty low. And especially when, if you would have told me, the defensive players that were on the board for them at 19, if you would have told me that ahead of time, like ahead of the draft, and you would have said, "Oh, they're still going to draft a receiver," I probably wouldn't have believed you. I mean, you had Will Johnson, who, look, goes in the middle of the second round, had a knee injury that was flagged by a couple of teams. Mike Green, who obviously we saw he went in the late second round. Clearly, some off the field issues with Mike Green was causing him to slide down. Donovan Zaraku, obviously a big one. Jahad Campbell, but all those guys besides Jahad Campbell all went in the second round. They all ended up going on day 2. So maybe there was a reason that the Buccaneers, passed on those guys. Maybe they obviously weren't as high on them as maybe the media was for potential fit. Malachi Stark's another guy who ends up going in round 1 a little bit later. But with all that talent on the board, the Bucs still elect to go with a wide receiver. And don't get me wrong, like, I think Emeka Egbuka is a good player. And I don't want to get that lost, right? I don't want, because I think he is good. He was probably my wide receiver too. And I think I had said this um, because James, does his draft live stream, and I guess he had tried to call me to get my thoughts on his stream or whatever. He called me on the phone and put me on speaker. And I said, it's not as surprising that it was a receiver in round 1. To me, the player was more surprising because who was also on the board was Matthew Golden, who I know we spent most of the time on that wide receiver show talking about a guy like Matthew Golden versus like a Ted McMillan, really. Ted McMillan obviously goes top 10 pick to the Panthers. Golden went a couple picks after that to the Green Bay Packers. If they were going to draft a receiver, I figured it was probably going to be Matthew Golden. Not Emeka Egbuka. Ends up being Egbuka. Obviously, has a lot of pro comparisons to Chris Godwin. I talked to a couple of people, and they said Chris Godwin. I saw on Twitter there was one, like a Puka Nakua thing thrown out. Obviously, an interest, a thing to remember with comparisons, especially around draft time, is it's not comparing how a career is going to turn out. It's comparing the play styles. So it's a very similar play style to Chris Godwin. And again, I think he's a good player, but for sure, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a surprise, especially at pick 19 there. Even though, I think in an ideal world, they probably would have traded back, but I think they realized that they wouldn't have been able to get Egbuka if had they traded back, and clearly it was a guy very high on their board.
Yeah, and I think with a pick like this too, to a certain degree, you just got to take it for what it is. Maybe read the tea leaves a little bit. The Bucs aren't going to come out and say anything about how they feel about Mike Evans or Chris Godwin, but let's be honest, when you just look at what they went through last season, you don't have to say much of anything. You go into that Kansas City game, you don't have Mike Evans, you don't have Chris Godwin for multiple games. And yeah, you've got a great offensive coordinator in Liam Cohen. You've got a great rookie running back in Bucky Irving, and Baker Mayfield was playing some great ball. So a lot of factors were able to keep that offense humming. But you've got another new offensive coordinator. Yep. And you've got these wide receivers who are another year older. You got Chris Godwin, who, again, was off to a monstrous start to the 2024 season. But you got to be realistic with him coming off of this injury, and I think the Bucs have as much faith in him as everyone else, but you can't be too sure. You also just paid him a lot of money. If they really doubted him, would they have paid him that money? I know that it was a team-friendly deal, so you have to take that into account as well. I don't really want to do all the mental gymnastics on that part of it right now, but the less complicated situation is also Mike Evans, 32 years old. He's not going to be playing that much longer. if you are at a point in the season where both of those guys go down, you still have a pretty stout wide receiver room if Emeka's in there, Jalen McMillan also in there as well. Let's not forget, he finished the last 5 games of the season in 2024 with 7 touchdowns. Jalen McMillan still very much going to be a piece in this offense moving forward. But the luxury that Josh Grizzard now has, if he's going to be missing guys, Todd Bowles wasn't exactly secretive about it as well. I think we touched on that. He had mentioned, I think more than a lot of other coaches, especially Jason Light, he had mentioned the idea of, quote, loading up on the offensive side of the ball and, quote, you got to win games by scoring points. So, Todd Bowles wasn't exactly keeping it a secret either.
No, the Bucs are definitely hoping to score a lot of points. The Bucs were 0-4 last season without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Mike Evans returned to the lineup after the Bucs bye week, and then the Bucs went on a little bit of a run. Obviously, it helps. When you look at who they were playing in that 4 weeks, okay. But also, when Mike Evans returns, the schedule is a little lighter. I get it. That helps. But they were 0-4 in that stretch without Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. So, it mattered, right? It obviously, it definitely mattered, and again, and I don't think the Buccaneers clearly, like the Buccaneers have bigger plans for Emeka Egbuka rather than he's going to be our wide receiver 3 or 4. Like I think they envisioned maybe like a wide receiver 3 this year, which in today's NFL, just like we talked about with the nickel corner, a wide receiver 3 is a starter, right? Like a wide receiver 3 is essentially a starter. So I think you're looking at that this year, but then I think in the future, like you mentioned, Mike Evans, 32 years old. I think he's stated that like he's not going to be one of these guys that plays till he's 40, right? Like it's just not going to happen. I don't even think like a 38, 37 is a thing, right? I think you're closer to the end than the beginning, and also I mean he's a free agent after this year, right? So you never know what's going to happen with that. Chris Godwin's coming off a major injury. He's 30, and it's a second major injury, right? It's not like this is his first time, so we don't really know how that's going to factor into it. And again, it's just, I like Jalen McMillan as a player, but Emeka Egbuka has a higher ceiling. He's a better player. And I don't think this ruins McMillan's value with the team, just like you mentioned, right? And I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't want that to get lost either. Yeah. Jalen McMillan's still going to be a very big, important piece to this offense. He's still going to get a ton of reps. Somebody asked Jason Light in the post-draft presser about, that, and he was like, well, you can have 4 wide receivers on the field at the same time. You can also rotate guys in and out, in the Tampa Bay Heat and stuff like that. Some of these games, in September at 1 p.m. or, we know, look, Mike Evans, gets cramps or, the hamstring, like, that's going to be an issue. And there's no guarantee that Chris Godwin's ready for week 1 or, if history tells us anything, Mike Evans may miss a game or 2. He has done that a handful of times throughout his career, so it would not be a shock. So, I think the Buccaneers are trying to get some really good insurance, basically, for this upcoming season with that pick. As surprising as it was, I think the fit makes sense schematically. It's just the overall player at that position at that point in the draft with that talent on the board, I think still was a pretty big surprise. It was something like, they might, but probably not, right? And then when they actually do, you're like, oh, wow, okay.
And when you fill out the rest of this receiver room, you look at a guy like Trey Palmer ultimately being the odd man out here because we have another wide receiver in this draft class that we're going to be talking about to wrap things up. We'll obviously cross that bridge when we come to it. But let's get into rounds 2 and 3, and I guess you can bunch these together because they are the same position. With pick number 53, the Buccaneers pick up Notre Dame cornerback Benjamin Morrison, and in round number 3, pick number 78, they pick up Kansas State corner Jacob Parrish. I know for a fact one of these two guys we had talked about a little bit on the Defensive Prospect Show, both of them going to be potential fits for this Todd Bowles defense. I'm very excited about Benjamin Morrison just because of his ability to kind of step in and be a nickel corner here. We talked a little bit pre-draft about the importance of having a dedicated nickel corner because for the last 4 or 5 years, Todd Bowles has kind of been switching around safeties, playing nickel in his defense. If you've got a dedicated guy who can do it, now, again, rookie, we got to see how they translate. Training camp going to help with that as well, getting some more live reps, but very excited about both of these picks. You can't have enough good corner depth.
No, and corner depth was clearly something that bothered them last year. with all due respect to a guy like Tyreek Thunderberg or Josh Hayes, like they were playing big roles down the stretch for the Bucs, right? Because Jamel Dean was hurt, and Zion McCollum got a little bit banged up. Tyke Smith got banged up, so they had to play much bigger roles than I think the Buccaneers anticipated or hoped for. And like if we're talking about Mike Evans missing time, well, yeah, odds are Jamel Dean's going to miss some time, right? That's just what has happened in his career. So odds are he's not going to play all 17 games. So yeah, I mean, cornerback depth I think was something they definitely wanted to address, and I think they did that. In the case of Morrison, I view him more outside than inside, especially maybe to start they try him inside, right? I can see it because he can play both. Um, this is probably a guy who, if he was healthy and played the full season, might be a first round pick. So I think the Buccaneers are benefiting from that a little bit. But the thing is, if he was healthy, he had a hip injury, missed 10 games because of that hip injury, had to have surgery on it. But I mean, previous 2 seasons had 6 interceptions in 2022, 3 interceptions in 2023. Todd Bowles had mentioned, wanting ball hawks. Well, Benjamin Morrison is a pretty big ball hawk, has a knack for getting the football, and I think again the upside, right, the ceiling of a Benjamin Morrison, if he can be healthy, the hip worries me a little bit because cornerbacks with hip issues. That's a little bit worrisome. That's a pretty big one. But if he's healthy, I think the ceiling for this guy could be a cornerback one. Maybe not an elite shutdown guy, but I think a guy where you can put him on your defense and say, okay, like we trust this guy on most weeks to take on another team's number one wide receiver. So I think it's going to take time. I think it's a good. That's why I don't think they're going to rush him, right? If the nick, I don't think they're going to force the nickel thing on him because I think they want to see how that hip responds, how everything goes with that. And if he's not good at nickel, I think Jacob Parrish is a better fit for that anyway.
Yeah. Smaller
Parrish
guy.
he's an undersized guy, which they don't really, not the typical profile they go with typically. But Parrish still projects probably as a nickel guy. But yeah, Morrison, I think, if not in the nickel, I think it's fine for him to basically take a redshirt year, sit behind Jamel Dean and Zion McCollum there. And most likely he's going to be able to get reps because Jamel Dean is probably going to miss some time.
Yeah, and a guy like Jacob Parrish, he gets billed as undersized, but I think what makes him a good fit in Todd Bowles' defense, he still comes off as a physical player. I think he could, flash a little bit and run support here and there. So excited to see what those guys can do. Now, a lot of people were kind of looking at rounds 2 and 3, and yes, the Buccaneers doubled up on corner, but wanted to get your thoughts on them waiting to get a pass rusher. They get an edge guy here, pick 121 in round 4. That is David Walker from Central Arkansas. Now, David Walker, I think I've heard a few people say this is one of the first picks here in this draft class for at least Tampa that you can justify him going higher than he was selected, right? Like, he's got a lot of really good tape. And if there's one thing he was able to do throughout his time in college, it was get after the quarterback. So I have no doubt that this guy is a dog. The Buccaneers got a couple of other pass rushers. We'll talk about them, but your thoughts on David Walker here in round 4?
Well, just quick disclaimer: this is my favorite draft pick of their entire class. I think I might have talked about him on the defensive show. He was one of my guys. He was one of my few guys that I really identified and liked. Not just for Tampa, but just like in general. Yeah, he was a guy who I thought made a lot of sense for the Bucs, but like even if the Bucs didn't take him, like I still just thought he was going to be a pretty good football player. There's a couple of reasons. I think when you look at the sack production, you're like, yeah, like I mean, 39 sacks in 4 seasons at Central Arkansas. It is Central Arkansas. Okay, so
Yeah.
the level of competition. Because people would say, well, why wasn't he a first round pick? There's a couple of reasons. The level of competition at Central Arkansas is not the greatest. On his tape, it looks like a man playing amongst boys at times. He is going to be 25 when the season kicks off. He turns 25 in June. And he is a tad bit undersized. He's about 6'1", 260. So for an edge rusher, it's a little bit undersized. And I don't think he's going to ever be an every down player. Like, I don't think you're going to be able to say, hey, man, you're going to play 80% of these snaps, and you're just going to get after the quarterback that way. And I view him as more of a pass rush specialist, a guy you can put on third downs to help give your pass rush a little bit more juice. A situational guy who can rack up some sacks for you on third downs in some critical spots, or even not sacks, but just get pressure. So I do think, despite those things, right, being a little bit undersized, being a smaller school. He's a pretty athletic dude. So I really like the pick. I think it was a smart gamble to take. And that's the type of flyer, that I think you need to take on day three.
Yeah.
A guy with a lot of traits, a lot of tools that you could potentially develop. If you can develop another tool there, maybe he can become, an every down player. But, that's still a ways away, I think, for him. But I really, really like the pick. And I think it was smart to address it finally.
Yeah, Willie Beeman makes a good point, too, checking in with the Cannon Fire crew. He says Walker jumps off the tape, very relentless in his pass rush and solid hand placement on offensive tackles. That was what I was going to say as well. His motor, he's a big motor guy, and I've talked about that time and time again on the show, especially when it comes to your defensive linemen. I like the high motor guys. He can get knocked down, and he can still finish the play 4, 5, 6 seconds later. That's what you like to see from a defensive lineman. So looking forward to that. The Buccaneers double up here in round number 5. Get another edge rusher, but this one's interesting. Round number 5, pick 157. They take SMU edge rusher Elijah Roberts. Now, Elijah Roberts is listed as an edge rusher, but the Buccaneers have him on their roster as a defensive lineman. They're going to kick him inside a little bit. And I want to say for good reason, because he is a hoss. 6'3", 292 pounds. He's got long arms, but short area quickness, so they say. Excited to see him carve out a role in this edge room, defensive line room. And I think with a pick like this, you got to, again, kind of read the tea leaves here. I'm assuming this is Will Golston's replacement. Maybe he waits until training camp to come back, but depending on where this kid lines up, I mean, what do you see here for Elijah Roberts? Another pick that I think is very likable when you look at how the Bucs are loading up this defensive line.
I definitely agree with you with the Will Golston, replacement. Basically, I don't expect him to be back. Yeah, and he definitely, listed as an edge on ESPN when they draft him. It's edge defender, this and that. But yeah, for the Buccaneers, he's going to be inside.
292.
Yeah, I mean, for some teams, in a 4-3, you probably could be a defensive end.
Yeah. But
probably not a guy you want consistently, standing up, rushing the passer. So I think, they're going to kick him inside. And basically, I think, he's going to be depth right behind, Kalijah Kancey, Logan Hall, along that interior there. And then hopefully, he can develop a little bit. I don't know. I think he'll get some playing time in 2025. But I wouldn't really expect him to be a starter, but that's okay to me. I think he is a pretty solid player. I was happy that they went to back to that well, basically, of pass rush, kind of, because he is, very effective when rushing the quarterback. There was actually a couple of things from PFF, I believe, I wanted to pull up here. He actually had 131 quarterback pressures since 2023. That was first amongst all players. So, I mean, clearly, doing something right has a lot of pass rush juice. And I think, they need edge rushers, right? We know that. But they also could use some juice along the interior there. Kalijah Kancey provides it. Vita Vea provides it, a little bit, but it's not Vita Vea's calling card. And Logan Hall provided a little bit last year, but you don't really know what you're going to get with Logan Hall again. So I think it was smart to load up on depth there. And especially in the trenches, I think you can never have enough depth. Those, trenches injuries, offensive line, defensive line, they can happen pretty frequently. Those guys are being physical on every single snap, basically. So you never know what can happen there. And I think it was pretty smart to load up there.
And we say this a lot on the show, too, but the best ability is availability in a Todd Bowles defense. And Will Golston, a guy who is beloved by the team. He's one of the longest tenured Buccaneers they have on the roster. The jury's still out on if he'll be back. But when you just look at how often he was available last season, look at his snap count. I think it was a career low in the 20%. It was like something between 21 and 26%, which is a career low for him. And the age is going to be up there. Guys like Greg Gaines early on in the season getting as many snaps as he was getting. Like, you don't really want that. I think it's a little more refreshing to mix in some of that younger talent and the Buccaneers find that in round 5 with Elijah Roberts. I always love watching these young defensive linemen. It's always scary just because, like, it takes time. And when you're a team with the window that the Buccaneers are in right now, you don't always love for those picks to take time, but loading up with reinforcements in the trenches is always a good thing.
Having patience could end up paying off,
Yeah,
right? Like
absolutely.
if you're patient with it, especially with defensive linemen, with pass rushers, with the corners, you might go through some struggles, but if they hit, you're going to be thankful that you waited that time and didn't give up on the guy a year or two early.
Yeah, and look at the guys that you have along that defensive line as well that are still looking to blossom a bit here this upcoming season. Yaya Diaby, expected a big third season for him. Kalijah Cansey, he's already set his goals sky high. He says he's going to lead the NFL in sacks if he is healthy all year. And truthfully, like, he could come close.
Listen,
It'll be a race down the stretch. I think
from the interior, that's tough.
Led the team last year.
Led the team, but
hey,
we know how this team's.
I'm high on Kalijah Cansey, so
I am too. But it's hey, if you don't think much of yourself, nobody else will, right? So
he's got a Hassan Reddick on the edge as well, So
I mean, I think it'll help, right? Improving the edge rush will help because it creates better matchups for everybody. But I don't. We'll see if that's the case. That's great.
Yeah, and we got some undrafted free agents to talk about as well. The Buccaneers just picked up a Ford F-350 to play defensive tackle.
So
very excited to break that one down. But let's wrap it up here with the final pick. The Buccaneers had 6 picks over 7 rounds in the 25 draft, and in round number 7, pick 235. Pretty good value here. I was excited to see this guy still available. Tez Johnson, wide receiver from Oregon, one of the lightest wide receivers ever drafted to the NFL. If I'm not mistaken, he has officially been confirmed as the lightest NFL player in history. 154 pounds at the NFL Combine, ran a 4.51 40-yard dash. Interesting to see how that plays out. But again, good value here for the 7th round. Tez Johnson from Oregon, one of your guys?
Not really, not one of my guys, but a guy I had my eye on. You don't love the 40 time with how small he is.
Yeah.
I think you'd like it, like a guy that small, you'd think he's faster. But I mean, just looking at it here, I think his value could be in a different spot, right? He had 20 punt returns in 2023. He had 13 punt returns in 2024. So I think that's where the Buccaneers are probably going to start him out at, especially because it's going to be hard to get reps as a wide receiver in this in this offense. So I would suggest that starting him off there, see if he can do it. The Bucs have obviously been trying to find and not to find Devin Hester out there, but trying to find an effective punt returner, right? Somebody who can flip the field from time to time. And give you, if you're down 10 in a game and you're feeling sluggish and stuff like that, you get that one big 45-yard return, takes you down to the opponent's 15, you might get a boost from that, right? So that's something to where I think Tez Johnson can help out with. I mean, it is a 7th round pick. I always say, with the draft, guys get drafted where they get drafted for a reason. So, I mean, there's clearly reasons why he got drafted in the 7th round. I think obviously that 40 time with his size, probably it's one of the reasons, probably. If he was a tad bit faster, I'm guessing he's probably not there, but just looking at it, because I don't really view this guy as being much of a wide receiver in this offense, I think that's his role. I think the Buccaneers are probably hoping and expecting him to be able to contribute something on special teams. And again, another one where kind of puts, and then look, training camp hasn't happened yet. Battles can happen, preseason games, whatever. But it's not great for Trey Palmer, right? Because Trey Palmer was a wide receiver on this team, okay, but then he also would return punts, return kicks occasionally. Well, now they got a guy who they think might be able to return punts.
Yeah.
So you're not only going to be competing for a roster spot as a wide receiver, but you're also competing as a roster spot for a special teams guy now. So to me, they've really soured on Trey Palmer. I don't know if I expect Trey Palmer to be on this roster come week 1 of the regular season. But again, That's what training camp's for. You're gonna have training camp battles. Maybe you get a motivated Trey Palmer, and he can turn the corner. Whether it be on special teams or as a wide receiver. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, it's still good value here with Tej Johnson, somebody who probably again in the seventh to take a flyer on that. You're completely fine with that.
Before we get into the undrafted free agent list here, we got a good question from Bat W in chat. He says, I don't know if it's been discussed, but the biggest need this team had was inside linebacker, and not getting one has left a hole. So the Bucs go offense in the first round, then they go defense, and more defense, even more so here with the undrafted free agents. But your thoughts on the lack of linebacker, considering who the Bucs still had on the board at 19?
Yeah, I mean, look, so obviously Jihad can they passed on linebackers multiple times, right? I think this shows that a couple things. One, I think they view Anthony Walker as an upgrade over KJ Britt. But also I think it shows more their faith in Servassier Dennis.
Yeah,
I think they really want to give Servassier Dennis a legit shot. you know, you don't have to like it. I don't have to like it. They like him though, right? So that's at the end of the day, that's the situation that you got to deal with, right? I think had the right linebacker been there, I don't think they would have been opposed to drafting one. I don't think it was something where like, no, definitely not. Carson Schwessinger from UCLA, I think if he would have been there, he ends up going first pick of the second round. But if he would have been there, I think they would have strongly considered him at that spot. And I don't know how high Jihad Campbell was on their board. I think the medical sort of scared him, but um, we'll have to wait and see how this linebacker room goes. But again, it's a risk the Bucs are taking, right? The Bucs took a risk with KJ Britt last year and it didn't pay off. They're taking another one this year with Servassier Dennis. So I do agree. I think. And again, and I'm actually going to be writing an article on Bucs Nation about this, about like potential like free agents the Bucs could target now the draft's over. Now that you have like that's the draft really the last time to add, significant pieces to your team, right? Now you're getting an idea of, all right, well, this is it. These are the holes still, stuff like that. So maybe they add a veteran linebacker at some point, right? Guys in training camp after the preseason, veterans can get cut. Maybe they add one then. So I wouldn't rule it out completely, but look, this team clearly are very high on Servassier Dennis, and whether you like it or not, that's just the case. And that's I think this draft really reflected that because it seems like every round really that they had passed on a linebacker that they could have drafted.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the questions of depth are going to come up. You got to hope that linebacker is a position that you can stay healthy at, because I feel like you have less dependable depth there than you do at other positions in the defense. But like you said, that all points to the faith that they have, not only in Walker to come in as an upgrade over Britt, but Servassier Dennis to play a role. And I truthfully think that he can be a contributor. I just hope that he can stay healthy, because when he was on the field last year, he did look pretty damn good. But let's get into this list of undrafted free agents, all of them reported so far. There are some fun names on this list. Memphis tight end Anthony Landfear, the first one reported. This is that F-350 I was talking about. Florida defensive tackle, the 461-pound Desmond Watson. So not only did the Buccaneers draft the lightest player in NFL history, they have signed the heaviest recorded player in NFL history at 461 pounds. I mean, this guy looks like he ate Vita Vea. Desmond Watson out of Florida. I don't know what expectations there are for this kid. You got to hope he can make the roster at the end of the day, but the fact that he got an opportunity and it's near his hometown in Tampa, I'm a big fan of Gators coming to Tampa. What can you say about Big Dez?
It'll make the preseason fun, right?
Yeah.
The preseason, like when those fourth stringers are in, that's brutal, right? Like that is just brutal, but that could be a little interesting. So it makes it a little bit more fun, I guess, to see, there's a big hoss out there just, going to work. But yeah, I mean, look, just like you said, he has to make the raw. Like this is an undrafted free agent, right? Like this is an undrafted free agent for a reason. But it is. It's a pretty fun one, right? And like if you're undrafted free agents, always aim for to get some fun guys. And I think there's another name coming up that's a pretty fun one, I guess you could say. But yeah, he'll make things interesting.
And the thing with Dez, too, is like, again, as a Gators fan, this guy's been on my radar for 2 or 3 years. I actually got to see him in action in Raymond James Stadium in the Gators bowl game earlier. He literally ate a running back in the backfield. He picked the guy up, slammed him on the ground, and I never saw him again.
Bad news for Buck here.
Yeah, the weight, I guess this is his playing weight. He came in pretty heavy. To Florida, and a lot of people were wondering, all right, they got a good strength program, they'll get him toned up, and he always kind of stayed where he was.
Yeah, I wonder if the Bucs try and hey, we have NFL dietitians here, we're gonna get you, we're gonna try and convert some of this weight into just more muscle. Basically.
I'd love to see it though. Very happy that he gets an opportunity, and very happy the Bucs are the team that gives it to him. Next up on the list, Nebraska linebacker John Bullock. Texas offensive lineman Jake Majors. Here's the big one. Colorado safety Shiloh Sanders. The Buccaneers get one of the Sanders clan here in Tampa Bay as an undrafted free agent. Shedeur Sanders goes in the 5th round to the Browns, and Shiloh ends up in Tampa. I mean, that Shedeur thing we could probably spend 20 minutes on, but Shiloh Sanders, do you think we'll see Deion Sanders walking around any Buccaneers training camp practices this year?
Maybe. I mean, it wouldn't exactly stun me, but we'll have to wait and see. I mean, look, Shiloh, a guy who, sure, take the chance on. Again, that's the thing. When it's undrafted free agents, get fun guys, it's going to be fun in the preseason, them talking about Shiloh Sanders, because it's a guy who really people have recognized for a long time, ever since, they were at Jackson State, right? So it's a guy who they've been identified with as a long time. And, sure, why not? Let's just have as many interesting guys as UDFAs as possible, basically. And if he hits, he hits.
I wonder what the procedure will be like. He won't nearly have the amount of freedom he had before, but when these guys were at Colorado, they were always getting content for the YouTube channel. They always had cameras following him around. I don't know how much of that's actually going to be tolerated or allowed.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Not for a UDFA.
Right, so. Yeah. But I don't know. The Bucs have had some fun with influencers in the past. I mean, Mr. Beast was literally at a Bucs game less than 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So he may still be signed to the roster. Next up on the UDFA list here, Bowling Green quarterback Connor Bazelak. I think I said that correctly, right?
Yeah, Bazelak. I'm not sure, yeah.
Well, there is your training camp quarterback there. Mm-hmm. Colorado wide receiver Will Shepard joins the team. Nebraska center Ben Scott. Georgia State offensive tackle Ben Chukwuma,
yeah, I think so. Like that.
California kicker Ryan Coe, some training camp competition there. LSU running back Josh Williams, Ohio cornerback Roman Parody, and West Virginia quarterback / wide receiver Garrett Green. So Garrett Green is interesting. Played 2 years of quarterback at West Virginia. The Buccaneers have him as a wide receiver.
Yeah. So, that's just another fun guy. Let's see if this quarterback can play wide receiver.
And rounding out the list for now, Marshall defensive back J.J. Roberts.
That's one I thought the Buccaneers were going to potentially draft. So to be able to get him as an undrafted free agent, pretty solid. Again, just potential depth that you're going to be able to find. So they found, Kayvon Merriweather was an undrafted free agent at the safety position, and he's played some roles for them over the years. So maybe a guy like Shiloh or a guy like J.J. Roberts could be that guy.
And last but not least, some rookie minicamp invites have been sent out. Louisiana defensive lineman Mason Narcisse. Mount Union running back Tyler Echeverry?
I'm not sure.
Echeverry? I think I said it correctly. Texas State quarterback Jordan McLeod. Jordan McLeod's fun because he is a Tampa guy. I believe he's from Tampa, but did play a little bit at USF as well. So a couple of quarterbacks going to be coming in for rookie minicamp, which I believe starts within a week or two here.
It should be, yeah. It's usually pretty quickly after the draft. So yeah, I would say probably next week.
Early on in May, we will see some of these guys suited up, reporting to One Buck Place. That will be exciting, and then into the void we go. Not a lot of football activity going to be happening over the next few months, at least from now until training camp. You do have OTAs, which were a couple weeks ago actually, but.
Well, those weren't the mandatory ones. You'll have the mandatory ones coming up here in June, I think.
But. There you go. And then, yeah, that's it. So we got some fun off-season content planned for you guys,
Yeah.
obviously, but this is officially wrapping up the NFL draft. Maybe we'll do one or two more post-draft shows, get some more insightful thoughts on some of these guys the Buccaneers have stacked up on their roster. But Evan, overall, how would you put a grade on the 2025 NFL draft class for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I think, again, a lot of people, now that we are past everything, a lot of people like to get online and pretend that they totally knew the Buccaneers were going to take a wide receiver in the first round. But it was surprising for a lot of people. We've all had some time to sleep on it for a couple of days. I like the pick. A lot of strong reasons for them to make that pick. And it makes a lot of sense the more that you think about it. But definitely was a surprise. And with the guys that they left on the board, I think it said a lot about their thoughts on just, Igbuka overall as a player in their system and someone who can hopefully come in and contribute for a very long time. Like, this is a pick for the present and the future. Correct. In a lot of ways, if it shakes out the way that we hope it does. But if you got to put a grade on it, the whole thing, what do you think?
Really quick, very thick hog. It's a great name. How soon after the draft do the rookie numbers get announced? There is no really set thing. They'll have numbers for rookie minicamp, but those numbers aren't really set in stone. So you're probably going to have to get closer to training camp to maybe get official numbers. But as far as grades go, I mean, I would probably give it an A minus. I can't go A, just because I think that the wide receiver at 19, and there might have been a couple other different players I would have gone with at different spots, but I think the positions overall were fine. And I like that they took some swings on a guy like Benjamin Morrison, who could be a cornerback one eventually. David Walker, who could develop into a guy who gets you 6, 7, 8 sacks in a rotation. Eventually a guy. Like Elijah Roberts, sorry, blank there. Like Elijah Roberts, who maybe will be so good I don't blank on his name. But and then Tej Johnson, potential punt returner. But and obviously like Emeka Egbuka, I think is a good player. So that's the other difference there too. But I would say probably A minus. I like a lot of the things that they did on days 2 and 3.
I'm going to go B+. I was kind of in the same boat that you are. I was back and forth between A- and B+. B+ because, again, wide receiver at 19. I like the pick. I think the talent is real. I think Jason Light and his staff clearly see something in this guy, so I Bleav in him already.
I would have gone in a different direction, but I get it.
I was definitely married to the Ezeraku pick. I was hoping for that to be our shiny pass rusher. He was on the board, and they took their guy, and that's totally fine. But it definitely was not what I expected. And the rest of the draft, though, day 2, that's the bread and butter. So I had all the faith in the world that Todd Bowles was going to cook. I like both of the corners there. I think the corner depth in particular, a lot of people are going to feel the way that they feel about the linebacker position, but, knock on wood, Lavonte David has a history of staying healthy. He's typically on the field, doesn't miss a lot of time. I know he's older, but you got to take what you already know about the guy is that he's healthy and he's typically on the field. So the Buccaneers putting more stock into the corner position, I don't mind it. I really don't. Especially when these are going to be guys that hopefully remain in the system for the next 3 or 4 years as well. And you talked about the upside with a guy like Morrison, Parrish coming in and potentially being your answer at nickel corner. I think it opens things up a little bit more than just one guy at that position would have been able to do. So I'm going to go B+. Again, the departure in round 1 is what takes me back, and it feels like high risk, high reward.
Yeah.
You've already got 2 very capable wide receivers on this team when they are healthy. So it's an insurance policy. I totally get the reasoning behind it. I was married to the edge rusher pick, but I'm going to go B+. I trust this staff. I trust Jason Light. and good value on day 3. I'm excited about these undrafted free agents as well. This is probably the most exciting list I think we've had post-draft in a while, just because of the star power, right? I mean, not only 461 pounds of defensive linemen, but you also got Shiloh Sanders. So all the entertainment that comes with that, you're going to be getting a lot of media coverage following these guys around. So it's exciting. I think we got some fun headlines to take into rookie camp for with us.
Definitely. That's all you can ask for at this point. So definitely a lot to break. And again, this probably won't be the last time we mention the draft class, but yeah, like you mentioned, we got a lot of fun off-season stuff coming up. So
absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, with all of that being said, that's just about going to do it for today's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Apologies again for the nightmare to start the show. We were ready to roll this thing out at 10:30. My internet gave me just enough juice to get us up and running and then completely shut down. So we had to go through the troubleshoot process.
We appreciate your patience. I kept looking at the chat and it was never at 0. There were some people that were waiting here the whole time. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. And we'll make sure that we cut out that first 45 minutes of dead air.
Silence.
Yeah, for the YouTube replay. A lot of good insight during that period. But
wow, this is a 2-hour podcast.
Yeah,
wow.
We
Not really.
really got into the weeds of it here. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Bucs news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL. And check out his written work at BucsNation.com. You got anything post-draft coming out?
We got a lot. Have grades, individual pick grades for rounds 1 to 3 out now. Going to have individual pick grades for rounds 4 to 7 out either tonight or tomorrow. Also going to be looking at some potential free agents the Buccaneers could look to sign that are available still after the draft. And then also going to be ranking every NFC South draft class by, 1 to 4, basically. Going to be looking at all the other teams in the NFC South. So, and then ranking those draft classes. So yeah, a lot coming up here on bucsnation.com. And then obviously on here, maybe, we'll even take a look at and turn some of those into videos. Again, part of those fun off-season plans that we have do involve those shorter videos as well. So I don't want to give away too much, but yeah, we got a lot of cool stuff coming up.
Last but not least, you can find myself Instagram and Twitter at Retticus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. One last shout out to the Cannon Fire crew. Thank you guys for coming through today. The moderator, Willie Beeman, holding it down. Willie, we got your email, and we love you, brother. Thank you for allowing us to, I guess, just talk Buccaneers football. That's all we jump on here and do, but we greatly appreciate your support and everything you mean to us, man. We're glad to have you here. Jim Pike, Bat W, MK, Mikey Kelly, the legend, Donnie, very thick hog.
Great.
You always need a pregnant pause after that one. Bill Camperus, Safa Keru, I think I said that correctly. Maria Guatemala, David Cannon. Let me make sure I don't miss anybody. We got a couple here towards the beginning. Band.
I mean,
Wagner.
look, it was a Sunday morning, not announced pod. Ended up doing it 45 minutes later, and we still had 50 plus in here. So shout out to you guys.
Exactly. Christopher Cole, bandwagoner, with a great point. He says, the wide receiver pick has only grown on me. Defensive needs seem schematic more than talent because it was always the same mistakes. Going to be interesting.
It's the same scheme, though.
Yeah, you're right.
That's the thing.
You're right. Jim Pike, one last thought here. He says, love the pick given what they did with the rest of the draft. Egbuka is a stud. We have Godwin for another decade now. He's a clone of Chris. Great pick. Thank you guys once again for hanging out with us. We will talk to you in the next one. Whenever we have some more Buccaneer news to bring you, be on the lookout. We got some more fun stuff planned as well. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Evan Wanish. We will see you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you for listening, and go Bucs.